Okay, we are live Saturday morning, 9:30 a.m. in Florida, and
9:30,
it's
9:29.
yep, 7:30 in Mexico City. Woohoo!
Arriba, arriba.
Arriba! I am barely arriba.
Ándale, ándale.
Yeah, I am still asleep, but we're
¿Qué
here.
pasa? ¿Qué pasa? ¿Cómo
Good
estás?
morning, everybody. June 3rd, 2023. It sounds like Space Odyssey. Like we're getting into science fiction years now. The but the we've got a lot to talk about this morning. And first of all, anybody who wants to come on, I left the link, the StreamYard link, in the comments. Feel free to come on if you have any questions, if you want to interject anything. This is really a what's the word for smorgasbord? It's a show about anything.
It's a
With a twist.
deluge of information.
But I want to start with this. It's I got a news article in the Twitter this morning. Fort Bragg becomes Fort Liberty, an Army's most prominent move to erase Confederate names from bases. Fort Bragg shed its Confederate namesake Friday to become Fort Liberty in a ceremony some veterans said was a small but important step in making the U.S. Army more welcoming to current and prospective Black service members. Okay, what's funny is I'll have to go through and read the article again, but I'd like to know how many Black people actually give a shit about the name. And I'll bet you there's probably more people who are disappointed because how many guys have gone through the Army and have been rotated, Dan,
Excuse me.
and have been rotated through Fort Bragg, and that name actually means something. So, and Dan and I were talking before, and it's a page out of Orwell where they're trying to erase history, and I'm sick and tired of people trying to rewrite history. And I know it's very easy to do in the internet days because they just change a page, and now everybody goes to Wikipedia and says, "Look, it was never this. It was always this." So,
You want me to say anything?
sure.
Yeah, I mean, I have a ton to say. So,
The floor is yours, senor.
thank you. So, we have so many problems, as everybody is aware, in this nation. The average bear trying to get by can't even pay their bills. All you need to know is basic math. You've got a economy that is valued supposedly at around 23 trillion. That's our GDP. You know, we boast and we brag we're still the biggest economy in the world. China's behind us at 17 trillion, whatever.
Is that in pesos or yuan?
I thought that was in dollars, at least for the US. So, but where am I going with this? So we're $23 trillion economy. Wahoo. Let's pound our chest. But then on this other side of the ledger, we're a 32 trillion or 31 trillion dollar, excuse me, in debt economy, in debt. So basically, we live, our expenses exceed what we bring in income. And that translates right down to the average American. Okay. We, you know, if we're bringing in 50 G's a year, 60 G's a year, we're spending 80 to get by the time you pay for your prescriptions and everything else. Where am I going with this? So now they're renaming these forts. They continue to erase history when the average bear is just, they can't even scrape by and pay the electric bill. So to answer Dave's question, do you think anybody gives a friggin' hoot about them renaming the fort? I think most Americans aren't even aware of, probably half of them aren't even aware of Fort Bragg, except the ones that served or were or veterans or had members that were in the service, okay? Or that happen to be military weenies like us, right? That follow that stuff. The average bear, they're not even aware of it. But to Dave's point, and I'm not defending the Confederacy, but I will defend history in general, okay? This is a great country. I love this country, but you know,
I will defend the Confederacy to a certain degree.
Okay, so if you let me finish, it's a great country, and I love this country. But you know, we have ugly parts of our history, like everybody else. Okay, that was an ugly part of our history. That's the truth. So to erase it, doesn't send it away. Okay. The Confederacy existed, guys, the Confederacy, for a reason. Okay. And the main reason, if you want to know your history, and most people don't because we're taught otherwise, is, and I get worked up because we're so ignorant as a whole, is, you know, the North, for the most part, was not fighting the Civil War, at least the first 2 years, because they cared about slavery. They didn't give a hoot about slavery. Okay. Okay. They brought that topic in 2 or 3 years into the war to galvanize the North, because the North, the first 2 years of the war, which most people don't know, okay, was getting their ass kicked. Okay. Have you ever heard of Bull Run? Have you ever heard of Manassas? Etc. Right? They were getting their ass kicked and their ass handed to them. Okay. So they had to do things to galvanize. Part of it was that message. The other part of it was taking the poor Irish off the boat that was coming over from the potato famine and giving them a rifle and putting them in a blue uniform saying, hey, have you ever seen South Carolina? Well, you will now. So this is the stuff they don't teach in school. Okay. So the Confederacy existed. End of story. Sorry if it hurts someone's feelings. I'm not defending it. Okay. But it existed. It's history. Okay. So I think it existed anyway, unless that's a farce and never existed. So then if that's the case, well, then fine, go erase it. But if it did exist, to pretend it didn't exist and then to just erase it, we're living in delusion land. That's my point. Well, and the reality is, if you know anything about the Civil War, a lot of it was state rights and state sovereignty. That was part of the reason, a big reason why the South wanted to succeed.
That was the whole reason.
Okay. I don't know if it was the whole reason, but it was huge. It was a big crux of it. They don't teach that in school. They don't talk about state sovereignty. Now, was it going to hurt them economically with the slaves and stuff? Yeah, because they were an agrarian society. No doubt about it. You know, they had free labor. Let's face it. I'm not condoning it. Of course it's wrong. But a lot of it was state sovereignty, which nobody talks about. They didn't want the federal government up their ass. Like, sound familiar right now? So I'm not saying I'm anti-government either, guys, okay? But if you look at the founding fathers, if you look at the Constitution, it delineated and spelled out pretty clearly that, you know, be careful about how top-heavy you get, right? If you know what I mean. And I think most people would agree we're pretty top-heavy, if you know what I mean. So that's my diatribe on that. So, you know, at the end of the day, changing the names, it probably doesn't amount to a piss hole in the snow. But on the other hand, maybe it does. You know, the Confederacy existed, guys. Okay, that was an ugly part of our history. 850,000 Americans died, by the way, in that battle, in that war that we know of, more than any other war. Okay, Americans on Americans killing each other. Talk about hell on earth. I mean, war is terrible as it is. You never want to go to war, but now you got to go to war and kill fellow countrymen. I'm glad I wasn't alive then, because it would have sucked having to kill fellow Americans and them killing me. Would have sucked. But that's my 2 cents on that. It's sad in a lot of ways, you know. Maybe it's a good thing overall. I don't know. But like you said, Dave, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, when your kids are in the classroom, and they won't even know the names by then were changed. I guarantee
there won't be a Columbus Day, right?
Yeah. Well, don't even get me going on that, because I sent you a video a week or two because of my Italian background. I mean, you know, a lot of people in this country have been discriminated against, including the Italians. Okay. They used to lynch Italians 100 years ago, by the way, guys. Nobody talks about that. That's historical fact. Look it up. They would lynch you. Okay. So yes,
the dark ones.
It doesn't matter. They're still Caucasians, right? I mean, you know, a lot of people have suffered, right? I'm not condoning it, but yeah. Okay. So, I just see the irony in it, because if you look at the history of Italy, of course, I'm biased. You know, Italy has brought a lot of stuff to the world. They brought aqueducts. They had running water 2,000 years ago. The Romans engineered and architected roads that are still in existence today. The entire Roman Empire contributed actually a lot to mankind. And then the irony is, if you look at our buildings in Washington, D.C. till this day, it's all influenced by Greek and Roman architecture. But yet those same people that came over here, some of my relatives, by the way, that fought in the U.S. Army, died in the U.S. Army. Okay, one was a Ranger. Okay, and I have uncles that served in the South Pacific that were U.S. Marines. These same people they would spit on and friggin' hang them, right? So, you know, kind of delusional in a lot of ways, kind of maddening in a way. But, you know, what are you going to do? I mean, that's mankind from the beginning, right? That's what we do. We beat up on each other and kill each other all the time.
Why do you think that? Why do you think that was allowed to happen down south?
I don't know. I don't know. You tell me. I don't know.
You have no idea at all?
Are we talking about, what are we talking about in particular?
Well, you said that Italians were being taken out and lynched.
They were, yeah.
Why?
They were considered workers without papers. They were considered inferior. They were considered greaseballs, on and on and on.
So why kill them? I mean, that's a little extreme, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
If you're supposed to believe in God?
100%. It's a joke. It's a joke. So, and I'm not just, you know, irritated about it just because, you know,
so is there any hypocrisy there?
A ton of hypocrisy. I mean, yeah.
So the whites down there, white Protestants probably, so they chose to eliminate their competition by killing them, because that's what it was. It was economic competition, wasn't it?
Absolutely, because one thing I will say, whether they're uneducated or not, Italians, like a lot of good people, Latins, etc., Asians, they come from strong family backgrounds. They're usually God-fearing people. They're good people. They work hard, strong families. These guys who are coming over here to try to make a better life, okay, they were working 15 hours a day, literally, you know, sweating it out, grinding it out, doing the worst jobs that you can't even imagine. And then they get killed over it, right? Well, you know, maybe if somebody else was willing to do the jobs, maybe they wouldn't have had to come over here. But, you know, and it's the same thing with what's going on today, right? Like in America, we want our cake and we want to eat it too, right? You know, none of the kids today want to do any kind of jobs that are hard, including my kids. Dave and I are the last generation, I'm biased, Generation X, where, you know, yeah, we were formally educated and if we're blessed to have good jobs at one point, white collar jobs, whatever. But we also came up, you know, blue collar in terms of willing to, you know, I worked for a landscaping company. You know, I worked for a fencing company. I did a little bit of welding at one point, you know, all kinds of work that, you know, et cetera, is good for the soul, you know, and we still need those skills today, but we look down upon them. And the average kid in America now, you know, they're an expert on Xbox and social media and YouTube, but they can't turn a screwdriver. And you wonder why America's having problems? You wonder why we don't have a manufacturing base?
Yeah, I've actually worked on some laborious jobs with some young people.
They don't know how to do anything.
And I can still out hustle them.
100%.
And I'm twice their age.
I love my kids, okay, but you know, we're old school, okay? I was putting up a fence 2 years ago with my old house. The thing was collapsing and falling on my shoulders. I was in the 90-degree sun, 54 years old, trying to hold the fence up. It's cutting into my shoulder. And my son, big, strong, almost 6 feet tall, 200 pounds. He's on his phone, staring at his phone. The fence is coming down on me. I'm looking at him like, hey, Jack, can you give the old man some help here? Things coming down, you know, I'm like, hello. He's like this on the phone. I wanted to punch him in the head. Exactly. You roadkill. It's a diatribe example. Total. So I let the fence fall on the ground. I let it collapse. And he's like, what are you doing, dude? I'm like, dude, did you hear me cry out to you? You're standing there with your fat head buried in the phone, because that's what we do for the kids now. Okay. The ambient screen, they're like, right? I mean, this is the society we've built, right? You wonder why we're going to AI? Because nobody knows how to work anymore.
Yeah, I want to go back to the example we were talking about the Italians getting hung. So obviously, if you were black in the South, I mean, there was a risk that you could get lynched. just 100 years ago,
Oh,
maybe 60 years ago.
absolutely.
And I'm not sure. It's very difficult for when you look back at a time. It's kind of like it's very difficult to understand what people were thinking back then, but it becomes almost like where you get a crowd large enough and the crowd starts doing crazy things that people wouldn't do as individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wasn't around back then. I hope I would not have participated in that, but
So here's
know,
what I'll say to that, okay, in a nutshell, for those that are believers, and I'm a believer. I mean, look what they did to Jesus, right? I mean, look what we did to him. At one point, the mobs were saying, string him up, put him up on the cross. They all went along with it. This is the Son of God.
Barabbas,
Yeah,
Barabbas.
you're right. This is the Son of God, right? So, we beat him, tortured him, made him carry his own cross, bled him. The Roman soldiers whipped him, everything else, and then strung him up on the cross and drove spikes through his extremities, right? So all you need to know, folks, is if man would do that to the Son of God, what would he do to you? I mean, are you surprised? I'm not surprised. Okay, we can be so good on one hand and benevolent, and on the other hand, totally be the complete opposite, totally malevolent, right? And that it says a lot about human nature. I mean, look what we did to the Son of God. Is it any wonder why we do this to our fellow brothers and sisters, especially if the skin's different? And the irony, I've always thought, call me a moron, is in this day, the 21st century, with stuff that still goes on about racism and all that, which is beyond ridiculous, because somebody's got darker skin or something, you're a racist or you think they're inferior, but yet you see white people laying out in the sun all the time trying to get tan. I mean, how ironic and stupid is that? The same people that might be racist against people with darker skin, they're trying to get a friggin' suntan. Hello? Does that make sense? It's ridiculous. Think about what you're doing, is what I'm saying, guys. Think about what you're doing.
Yeah, I think it's almost insane to think that the United States is a racist country today. I mean, humanity is always going to have discrimination. That's just part of being human. And discrimination is just a form of ignorance in most cases.
Yeah.
Because most people are going to be fearful or reject what they don't know or what they're uncomfortable with. And it takes exposure to eliminate discrimination. And the federal government itself, I'm not a fan of most government because I think that most government only creates problems. They create more problems than they resolve. In fact, they don't resolve many problems at all. And one of the examples, if we want to go into, we can transition into the Federal Reserve and what they're doing, and though, if it wasn't for those people, nature has its own systems of balances,
100%
balances. Things get worked out. It might not be clean or pretty, but things get worked out. So our society has chosen to believe in government and given up their freedoms and their liberties to these criminals who only help themselves. And you're going to get the shaft anyways. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it's, you talk about the pendulum. So if we talk about, affirmative action, why is there affirmative action today? Okay, I'm just going to pose that question. I'm not going to discuss it because it would be an hour-long discussion. You want to talk about, this is an example of government going way too far. Okay, so let's go into the Federal Reserve and what our government's doing now. Government has only created laws and regulations now that help the criminals. they've gotten rid of Glass-Steagall, and they changed the bank laws so that these banks could now become traders. They can basically manage money on both sides.
100%.
So they're not going to be objective. They're going to rob Peter and pay Paul.
Yeah, we can thank Billy Clinton for that one, the Glass-Steagall. So the SEC and the antitrust legislation came into existence around 1932, 1933 or so, 34, something like that, after the Great Depression. And the purpose of it, guys, in a nutshell, was to separate and segregate and not commingle certain activities, financial activities, for example, banking and investing. They couldn't be intertwined and commingled. But as of 1999, to Dave's point, it's totally commingled and intertwined and everything else. And then you factor in with the Federal Reserve, what he said is with the centralization of the money, right, which is, you got to wonder if that's truly free market. You have devaluing a currency over the last 120 years. It's worth like 3% of what it used to be, $1. And then on top of it, with inflation, they peak and rise. They put inflation up and down over time. So we get robbed both ways. You get robbed with the devaluation of the currency, and you get robbed with inflation. So if you were making 100 G's, guys, here's an example. And most people don't realize this. My own parents, who I love dearly, they don't get this. They just look at nominal aggregate figures. Oh, you're making $100,000 a year. Well, if you were making 100 G's in 2020, that 100 G's right now, let's say you got a raise or two, you're making 105 now. Yay. That 100 G's has probably 90,000 purchasing power right now, 85 in just 3 or 4 years. So basically you've gotten a D raise in the last 2 or 3 years of 15, 20% in purchasing power. And it's going to do this over time. The only way to combat that is to bring in more income, to bring in more revenue, to start businesses, stuff like that. That's the only way to combat it. That's the only control you have as an individual, because you don't have control over the money supply, the Fed, and you don't have control over inflation. But you do have control, to an extent anyway, of the income that you can bring in. And that's where you got to be diligent. And that's where you got to be creative. Because the other problem is that, and I'm facing it myself, and Dave, to an extent, whatever, is that more and more decent jobs are just going away over time. They're being replaced. And more of the white collar jobs are going to get cut into by automation as well. So that's a problem as well. You've got the devaluation of currency, you've got inflation eroding away, and jobs going away. If that's not a friggin' disaster, I don't know what is. Jobs over time going away as well through automation. And everybody thought, well, it'll be all the low-level jobs. It'll be the guys at McDonald's, a kiosk and all that. Yep, that's true. But a lot of lawyers are going to start to get replaced. A lot of accountants are going to get replaced. A lot of doctors, basic stuff that they do, are going to get replaced. Truck drivers, you name it. So somebody said a few days ago on some video, I forget which one, but within 10 years, there'll be no drivers whatsoever on the roads driving anything, like semis and all that crap, delivery drivers, whatever. I'm like, 10 years? Are you kidding me? Try 5. Try 5 years or less. It ain't going to be 10 years, the speed at which this stuff's speeding up. No way. Yeah, I wish 10 years.
I think it will take longer because software is a lot easier to implement than hardware and physical. We don't have the infrastructure for it either. And you can see through the trials that they're doing that it's not reliable.
What's not reliable?
These self-driving vehicles. You have to set it up almost like on train tracks where they have their own roads.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, anything's possible. I think it will take longer than expected, the hardware type thing. Doesn't mean trials won't go on, but I think that the mass adoption will take longer than we think, because I think it will be more challenging. Because you see it with all these Tesla cars blowing up and crashing.
I don't think it'll take as long as you think. And regardless of the average bear, it doesn't matter what the average bear thinks and says. We have no say in the matter. The powers that be are going to not just phase it in, but they're going to ram it down our throat. And whether we like it or not. And they already know that, there's not going to be any resistance. Nobody can get off the couch. Are you kidding me?
Well, here's the problem is supposedly there was some infrastructure act passed a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. infrastructure
Is a joke.
Is approaching third world status.
It's a joke. It's a complete joke.
So how are we? I mean, if you don't have an infrastructure,
excuse me. Yep.
Your economy is going to suffer. It's a direct parallel correlation. And if you don't invest in your infrastructure, and you can just see all these train accidents we're having, and that's why I say about these self-driving vehicles, the problem is the infrastructure is so bad that I'm not sure a self-driving vehicle is going to be able to
compensate.
Compensate.
I agree. So let me add a specific example to your point, Dave. You look at China right now and Japan, they have high-speed trains that do 250, 300 miles per hour, boom, like bullets, go from city to city, totally modern, shaped like a bullet, streamlined, beautiful looking. Oh, by the way, there's no graffiti and gang signs on any of it, okay? Because those societies are just pristine. They don't put up with that crap. And then on the flip side of the coin, you've got us in Amtrak. Okay, so Amtrak is asking the government now, they want to upgrade all their stuff and they want to try to get to those levels. Well, guess what? They can't get to those levels because they're still on train tracks, okay, that are 100 years old. They want to upgrade the trains. I'm not an engineer, train engineer, okay? I used to build computer networks, but I have common sense, okay? So you want these nice fancy trains and bullet trains and stuff, but guess what? Don't you got to upgrade the train tracks too? Because those bullet trains aren't running on 100-year-old train tracks, okay, that Boxcar Willie used to play the banjo on, 112 years ago. Boom, 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 boom. Nothing against Boxcar Willie, but those trains aren't going to run on that. Hello? So, like, nobody's talking about that. All that stuff's got to be ripped up. But, Biden, hey, just sent whatever, 100 billion over to the Ukraine, okay? So, like, what could that 100 billion do? Like, maybe for our infrastructure to upgrade the trains, for example. Right. So they're talking about the Boston to New York train thing. I've taken that a few times back in the day doing business. It's antiquated. It's a piece of junk. If you take a picture of our Amtrak train system and compare it to what they got in China and Japan right now, it's a laughing stock. It's like comparing a modern day NASCAR right this second to the stock cars they ran in 1975 with Richard Petty. There's no comparison. There's no comparison. You're going to get blown away. It's going to blow your friggin' doors off. And you're going to be like, that's where we're at. That's a perfect example. So, and then our, even in our main cities and stuff. I mean, look at our transportation. Public transportation is a complete friggin' joke. The buses don't even arrive on time half the time. Europeans that come over here, they come from Europe, and I'm not saying Europe's perfect, but they got a good public system and stuff that they can get by on. They come over here, they want to use the bus system. I mean, they can't believe what they're seeing. The guy shows up 15 minutes later with a, Marlboro hanging out of his mouth, hasn't shaved in 4 days. That's what we have. So, everything is hub and spoke design. You have to have a car, and there's so many people now that can't afford cars and the auto insurance. It's a cottage industry. You have to own a car so you can make car payments, so that you can own auto insurance, so that you can make insurance payments. And oh, by the way, God forbid if you have to file a friggin' claim, because you can always find somebody at the company to accept your payment and to sign up. But when I need customer service, I got to call in 17 effing times. And God forbid if I got to file a claim. That's a 6-month process. And at the end of it, I lose anyway, and my premium goes up anyway. That's what we have. That's what we have. Oh, Dan, you're complaining, you're negative, you're whining. I'm just describing it as I see it. I mean, if you think that's optimal and that works, guys, God bless you. I don't. It's called shit show. So yeah, we keep supporting.
Yeah, and the reason the train failed, the Boston, New York train failed, is because, like you said, you have to rip up the train tracks. And if you're going to travel 200 miles an hour, you have to have mostly straightaway sections.
Absolutely.
And what they ran into in Connecticut is that the residents refused to sell their land.
Right.
And they didn't take it on eminent domain because those were very wealthy parts of Connecticut around Pfizer.
Right.
And all those people. And so they have this train that can run 200 miles an hour, but it can only go 60.
Yeah. I mean, so, because everybody, hey, just drive your car. Just be in gridlock as the population continues to grow and stress people out further. I mean, what's the average American commute now? It's like 45 minutes or something. That's
and I used to,
that's average.
When I lived in Connecticut, I faced that problem. I had to decide, these are my choices. I only had to drive, I think, 25 miles.
Yeah, which isn't that far.
But I had to decide, okay, number one, either I go into work 2 hours early to avoid the rush hour traffic, or I take public transportation, or I could sit in traffic but I mean, in essence, I'd be sitting an hour and a half in traffic each way.
They're all 2-hour options, basically, hour and a half to 2-hour options. All of them.
So I took Metro North, the train that goes to New York and cuts through Connecticut. And the trains are all ancient. They're not in good condition.
Garbage.
And they never have enough cars, so that there's people standing most of the way. And it's just and you're paying $60 a month.
And dude, that was 20 years ago. Okay, so where I'm from, Boston, the MBTA, people that commute from the suburbs into the city, guess what an MBTA pass is, bro? Now, a month.
300.
A month. Take a guess.
300.
Dude, it's an effing car payment. It's like $500 a month now.
Wow.
Yeah. To buy a pass, a monthly pass to commute back and forth, $500 a month.
And is that a private company or a public company that runs that?
The MBTA? I think it's a combination of the two. I don't know for sure. But the point is, it's exorbitantly expensive. Or if you do the Amtrak pass too, let's say you're coming from west of the city and heading east, that's $300 or $400 a month now or more. So if you're a professional, even if you're making 120 G's, by the time you factor in your commuting costs, your living expenses, paying the rail thing, it's a joke. There's nothing left. There's nothing left at the end of the month. You can barely pay your rent. And it's all on antiquated equipment, like you said, Dave. $500 a month to ride back and forth on a friggin' tin can on wheels. A piece of junk.
I've been a passenger with other people who have managed this stuff, but I have never ordered an Uber or a Lyft or any of those things myself in the United States.
I have a couple times.
But when I've done it, the price of those things are so darn expensive. I mean, I was in a ride one time. We went like 10 minutes. It was like $40. And I was like,
look, here's the thing, man. I've said this for years, and I've gotten in outright debates with people, and maybe I'm wrong, but when you talk about things like education and healthcare, for example, and let's say even public transportation, the problem is, as much as I love the US, the problem is we're just so profit driven and profit oriented, right? At all costs, to the point where it stymies stuff at times, right? So the minute you introduce the profit motive in certain things, like public transportation, for example, or the Uber drivers, like you said, I mean, everybody wants to make, $3,000 a week driving an Uber car, they want to make.
And don't forget the tip.
Exactly. And don't forget the $25 tip, right?
Even for Uber Eats.
Yeah.
They want a 25% tip.
And it's the same thing with education in this country. The whole college system, I hope it effing collapses. I really do. And it seems to be on that way. I just read an article the other day that says
It's all subsidized.
more and more high school kids are choosing to opt out and not go to school now because they're just looking at it. They're like, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to take these bullshit entrance exams. I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to get in, take some bullshit degree, and then I'm going to get to graduate with 100 G's in debt or 200 G's in debt. Or if I want to do a real job, like be a doctor or something, I get to graduate with $500,000 in debt, $600,000 in debt. And I get to wait till I'm 52 to pay the shit off. It's a joke. It's a total joke.
That's why people aren't getting married and starting lives in their 20s anymore.
They can't. They can't. Like our parents did it right out of friggin' high school. They had a family and were rolling and had a house by the time they were 25. Nobody can do that anymore. Are you kidding me? That's beyond a pipe dream. They're lucky if they could do it if they're 35 or 45, most people. Especially the millennials that have taken it on the chin and the Gen Zers that are going to take it on the chin or are taking it on the chin. So, you know, we've built a total, in my opinion, house of cards, total house of cards. And, you know, I'm all for being humanitarian and helping people. I really am. But we got to help ourselves, too. We got to help ourselves. Maybe we shouldn't be sending 100 billion to the Ukraine every other friggin' week. Because 100 billion.
Is there a high-speed train in Florida, Dan?
Not that I'm aware of, but they're talking about it, actually. They're talking about.
We got a comment here that says one high-speed train in Florida. And crime is up where? Well, it's up. I mean, you can see these stories. Well, is there any punishment for crime today? Unless, I mean, for us, there probably is. But for like these people you see on these videos going in, stealing stuff, do they get prosecuted?
Not if you're in California now. I mean, didn't they pass a law that said, you know,
up to a certain amount, you
can go in the store and you can walk out with up to $100 worth of something, and we're not even going to bother to prosecute you.
Well, you remember back in the 90s, I got that apartment on Lombard Street in San Francisco, and you came out and stayed for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And let's see, Russia Light. George Carlin. If you really want to know what the score is, listen to George Carlin. He'll tell you. And you can laugh, but he wasn't saying it to make you laugh. He was saying it to wake people up.
It was just his medium to deliver.
Right. But San Francisco, you could see that it was starting to change back in the 90s, where there are a lot of homeless people who were getting aggressive back then. Today, that city is a shadow of what it used to be. That city is probably going to sink even further from what I'm seeing. I haven't been there in 5 years, but
well, you've shown me videos even in Philadelphia and stuff.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe what I was looking at. It looked like a fifth world nation. It didn't even look third world. I mean, it looked like something out of the movies. Yeah. I mean, the trash, the garbage, the litter on the streets, the junkies rolling all over the road, you know, transvestites walking around. I mean, on and on and on. And just, you know, people shooting up on the street. I mean, right? And we're sending 100 billion to the Ukraine. I mean, what could some of that money do for our own? I'll keep posing the question. That's a lot of money.
It's so much more than just 100 billion, Dan. Well,
I know. I'm just citing.
Charlie's making a comment. 1960, a house was 15 grand. I can tell you, because I had this discussion. My father and mother, when they got married in 1959, they bought a house in Weymouth, right near where you used to live, Dan. Right. And the houses were tiny. Right. I mean, it was like 1,200 square feet if you're lucky.
Right.
And my father fixed it up. I think he spent $4,000 or $5,000 on a house, which was about. Here's the funny thing, which is about what was he making in a year at that time.
Right.
Today it's what, 10 times our income.
It's got to be between 5 and 10 easy on average, right? At least it was a 1-to-1 ratio, roughly, to your point.
Yeah, and the whole banking. We've had Daryl Schoon on here, and he goes into depth about how mortgages are one of the biggest scams the bankers have ever created.
It's a perpetual money stream.
Well, think about it. you have this house, you buy it, you have a mortgage. The interest is loaded in the first 10 years of your mortgage.
Absolutely.
So you buy a house for $100,000, you're really paying $200,000 for it. Then you live there 10 years. It's almost all interest you've paid. Now you sell the house for $300,000 or $200,000. You think you're making money when in reality you paid, if you add up all the interest you paid, all the taxes you paid, you really didn't make money.
Or you made very, very little. You know, you think you walked away with 100 G's, you walked away with like 15.
Yeah. So the next guy comes in. Now they have a $200,000 mortgage. They're there 10 years. They paid $400,000. They sell it for $300,000. But who's making the most money in that on all these transactions?
The bankers are there every step of the way. Every step of the way.
Bankers, they're protected on student loan. This is going to be very interesting to see what happens. Like, there's a lot of people who are saying we're coming up to a debt jubilee, that over history there have been debt jubilees, that the banksters are going to have to forgive everything or face getting their heads cut off through a revolution. I find it hard to, but in looking at how they're reacting to Russia and China, I find it hard to believe that this group who's leading the world today believe that they're going to have any resistance at all. They can do anything they want right now, and they think they can get away with it. Comment?
Well, I would say in the U.S., that's probably a true statement. Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
world. Look at Germany.
yeah,
Look at
we
Europe,
don't.
right?
Like I said, I can only speak for us. We can't get off the couch. We got the Doritos, the Yum Yum pies, and we're watching, college football and in Tom Brady on the weekends. So I don't have time for that stuff, Dave. I've got to see what the score is.
What's Tom doing?
Yeah.
We want to know.
Yep.
Who's he dating now?
I have no idea what my income is and what my budget is. I just know I'm way underwater, but I know the statistics of Tom Brady's jockstrap.
Well, that stat just came out. Most credit card debt in ever, over $1 trillion, I think.
Are you surprised?
Well, the good thing is
most Americans use credit
card. The good thing is that's unsecured debt. It's unsecured debt. So the banks might have to eat that.
Right.
And I'm sure they'll get bailed out.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll use fear. Fear is when you start hearing the news talking about you must do this or it will collapse. You must do this or the commies will win. You must do this or little Sally will be, not get ahead, your kid. That's how they get you. They use fear. When they do that, this is what you have to do. Up yours. No way. And until we start doing that, we're going to continue to sink. We're going to continue to sink until you're able to say, no mas, no mas. But I already know, if you read the Bible and you know human history, that's where we're going. Where we're going.
I mean,
and you have to wonder if that's why the powers that be want to get rid of 6.2 billion people, because it's for them it's untenable at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not worried about it. I mean, if you read Revelations, you know what's coming. Don't know exactly when, but you know it's coming. You either believe it or you don't. So one third of the world essentially will perish, according to the good book, at least 1/3. And who knows, maybe more if, powers that be, whatever,
Well, that's where I get into when people start saying, oh, people are essentially good. I believe in humanity. Really? What are you reading?
Well, yeah. So
I mean, people are not, look at our world. Do you consider this a good world? The world we've constructed, the world we've built. Do you think that do you think we could be doing better than this? A lot better?
Oh, yeah. No question. Yeah, no, we've constructed a total shit show. Totally. In my opinion, totally. And anybody that's
And that's why so many people try to take stuff for free now, or get on government assistance and suck from the government tit in their jobs, where they join the army, get a pension, and do this, get a pension, and then take their SNAP program or whatever. You know, this is why everybody looks to government now, Dan.
yeah, I mean, it started in the 60s with the Great Society, I guess, right? And it's built, it's a monster that's been built with 6 heads and Frankenstein, whatever. And, you know, good luck, you know, trying to stop it. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, I have no problem having certain programs in place that help people that truly need help, right? I have no problem with that. Because, you know, we all, sometimes unfortunate things happen, and sometimes we all need help or assistance, and I'm fine with that. But to your point, it's gotten to the point where it's well beyond that now. It's well beyond that.
When's the last time you were in a major U.S. city, Dan?
It's been a while.
Would you call Boston a major city?
Yeah.
You would?
It's a tier 1.
Well, that's probably, I was in New York last
small,
year.
but
Yeah, I was in New York City last year, and then I was in Boston, obviously.
Hmm.
But those are the last 2 U.S. cities I've been in. And we got Charlie here, this is a new name for Charlie. He worked in, San Francisco. When we were in San Francisco, did you find it unsafe? I mean, it was a little seedy back then, right? But
yeah, but he just said it. In that same area where he worked 20 years ago was fine, but now he can't go back there. So, yeah.
I mean, like, everybody points to like Mexico and these other countries as being unsafe, and maybe we should stop pointing to other countries and say, you know, let's get a mirror. Then you can point. You.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, whatever. I mean, where do you want to go? I mean, you got the southern border, which is as porous as it gets. Who knows who continues to come through there? You know, who knows? God Almighty himself only knows. Who knows how much we've been infiltrated to this point? I don't think anybody knows. You know, we have massive issues, fentanyl killing thousands of Americans a year. You know, what's the plan, guys, to fix that? I don't seem to see one. Maybe there is one. I guess the FBI is working hard at it or something, or the DEA. I don't know. But in their defense, I'm sure there's good people in those orgs that really want to make a difference. But no, I think there are some, but I think they're stymied by the bulk or whatever.
They go there for the guaranteed check and the benefits.
Some of them probably, but I do think
same reason why you're gonna, you know, look into the post office, right? Guaranteed check.
people need to survive.
Easy job.
Well, I guess. Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. People need to survive.
So now we're a country where it's just about survival.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, to answer your question. Yeah, the average bear is not getting by.
That's called the Titanic, folks. Titanic. We're going down.
Yeah.
We are down.
Yeah. We're on this trajectory. And if we don't pull the plane up like real soon, if not like now, yeah, it's going to crash. Yeah, in my opinion. 100%. 100%.
Yeah, I want to interject. So we've talked about this, but I don't. Now that we've had a few days to think about it. We probably haven't thought about it, but you know, in talking about the stock market, AT&T, Verizon, and now T-Mobile. Those are the 3 major cell phone provider carriers in the United States, and none of them seem to be going in the direction right now. And even in a bad economy, people have always paid their cell phone bill, because a cell phone is, in the United States or anywhere in the world now, it's probably one of the most useful tools for efficiency and just living your life. You don't need a landline anymore, right? You don't even need, I guess you don't even need internet if you have a cell phone. But the fact that those companies are starting to really plummet, are we watching a paradigm shift without even knowing it? Are we going to, like the rest of the world is setting up 5G and even 6G now in China, where everything is going to be quote unquote free Wi-Fi. So do you even need those companies if you have free Wi-Fi signal? You know, you could just, like, I don't have a cell phone plan. I use free Wi-Fi to talk to people using Google. I basically converted my cell phone number over to Google for a one-time $20 fee, and I don't have to pay a monthly fee anymore. And as long as I have Wi-Fi, I can make calls using, like if I call you, you'll see it's me. It's my same phone number. So are we starting to see people do that? Are things getting so bad economically that people are no longer want to even pay $25, $50, $100 for their cell phone plans? Yes, no?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would say is people are not going to.
But is that a sign that we're changing, we're morphing technologies, we're changing the paradigm where we're not even going to need to use that existing infrastructure anymore?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think it is starting to, morph or change or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
So AT&T has been a perennial winner for a lot of insurance. And this is something that isn't being talked about, Dan, but insurance plans, you used to work for an insurance company, so maybe you can educate us on this, is a lot of these insurance annuity plans and even pensions, they rely on the stock market, don't they?
Yeah, ultimately, yeah. Yeah, so they take the money and
interest rates.
So you've got different types of insurance. You've got term life insurance, which doesn't have a value to it. It doesn't have cash value. It's just pure insurance. You pay a certain premium based on your age, based on your health, whether you're a smoker, non-smoker, based on your sex. And you're just renting insurance is what you're doing. And if you drop dead, $100,000 or $250,000 or $500,000, whatever the face value is, will be paid out. Then on the other hand, you have what's called whole life insurance that has a cash value to it. So when you make a premium payment, X amount of that premium payment goes to the cash value, which builds interest and accrues over time, tax-free, by the way, which you can then take those dividends and either reinvest them as it earns dividends as well, or you could take the cash. And that's what a lot of the wealthy do, by the way. A lot of the wealthy don't have regular bank accounts. They don't have 401ks or IRAs, any of that garbage that's been sold off to the middle class. They really move their money in and out of and rotate things between investments. And then in terms of insurance, they're their own bankers. If they need a big hit of money, they take the cash value out of their whole life policy, borrow from themselves, and then pay it back over time. That's what they do. And then they've got insurance.
Like Kiyosaki has unplugged a lot of that. A lot of them rely on debt. Like they will use their assets as collateral for debt and then live on the debt and then pay back the interest.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is the basic principle that they utilize is if you can live off the interest, you're golden. Never touch the principal and you're good.
Never touch the principal.
Right. But the problem is the middle class and the poor don't teach that. And they don't even have enough money to have big enough principal to generate enough interest to live off of. But the rich figured this out, hundreds of years ago.
Back when you were selling those things, what type of interest rate would you say for those people to expect?
On the insurance?
Yeah, on those type of plans.
probably anywhere between steady 6 to 8%. Some of the annuities upwards of 8 to 10%. The rates have changed a little bit. You have fixed annuities, and then you have what's called variable annuities. The variable annuities, to your point, unlike a fixed annuity, is fueled by like steady instruments, like maybe T-bills, money market funds, stuff like that. Whereas the variable, they'll go out and invest in mutual funds and or certain.
What I'm saying is for
stocks.
those companies like a John Hancock,
Yeah,
or name some other ones in that field.
New York Life, whatever.
Okay.
Mutual of.
How are they able to stay solvent if they're paying out 6 to 8% on pensions of these funds, and they can't even get that from government T-bills? Or that means they have to go very, very risky assets or risky gambles in the stock market, right?
So I would say yes and no. I mean, by nature, insurance companies are very conservative organizations. The thing you got to keep in mind is what really keeps them
Or is
afloat.
it a Ponzi?
Well, yeah, I mean, the more subscribers they have, the more people they have on a monthly basis paying premiums. That's your cash flow right there. And then they take that cash flow because they know for let's put it this way. I don't know what the figures are, but I'm guessing for every $100 of premium that comes in a month from the premium payers, they probably pay out $1 in claims. You hear what I'm saying? For every $100 of premium that comes in on a monthly basis, I'll bet you they're only paying out $1 in claims.
Well, their policy is first claim, always done. And a certain percentage of people are not going to, contest that.
Yeah. Well, but the other thing is they know that the bulk of the population, let's say there's 100 people paying $1 premium a month, hence $100 coming in premium, 100 people. They know, Dave, statistically speaking, they've got actuarial tables and everything else. They know statistically speaking that out of the 100 people, 1 or 2 might file a claim a year, 1 or 2%. So, I mean, talk about cash flow coming in every month, hand over fist to deal with. And then they can go off and invest it all in all these other places and get 10% interest, who knows, or more. And then, pay out like what the banks do. Same thing with the banks. They're paying you 1% interest now. Everybody's like, oh, this is awesome, or even 5%. But they get 8% on, personal loans. They get 8 or 10% on car loans. They get 20% on credit cards. They get 6 or 7% on mortgages, and they pay you 1%. On and on and on.
But what happens when you have a pandemic
business
and the jab, and the mortality rate starts going up 6, 8, 10 times normal?
It
So
won't.
now
though.
you're having to pay those out.
It won't. That won't happen. Guaranteed.
It's already happening.
Yeah, but you know what? That's why they're painting the mortality rates as something different, right? They're painting them as different.
But they're still dead.
Yeah, and the companies.
And if you have an insurance plan, you still got to pay out the dividend, right? The death benefit.
Well, I don't think it's. I don't know this, but I don't think it's hit to a point where it's impacting their bottom line in any crazy favorable manner.
Not yet.
Unfavorable manner, that is. I don't think so.
Welcome. Okay, everybody. The Danimal is probably making lunch, for all I know. But thanks for joining us, and we'll try to do this again. The live streams. It was just try to throw a curveball in our normal routine. Thanks, everybody. Peace. Have a great weekend. All right, Dan. See you later.